Hey, thanks for listening to the show or watching the show or reading the show if you prefer to read the transcript. It is an option that not a lot of people choose, but some people do.
Yeah, I've been reading this podcast lately.
I've been reading this podcast lately. Hey, I've got some shows. Hey, this week I'm in Kansas City, I'm in St. Louis and Springfield doing the Show Me tour. And then later this month I'm in Vegas all week. So you'll know where to find me. Yeah.
He'll be at the Chris Angel show every night.
Every night. I'm using my entire paycheck to buy Chris Angel tickets. So, no, please come hang out at the shows. I would love to see you there. And then I've got Birmingham, Alabama, and Georgia. And, I've got tour dates, and they're on my website, paulruddtheactor.com. And we're going to jump into the episode.
All right, man. Have you heard of the Panama Papers?
Hey, April Fools. Could you imagine if I brought another one?
You did it again.
If I brought another one.
Just for weeks, I'm like, people are like, I want to know what the Panama Papers are.
I got hate crimes by the IRS. I'm not joking when I say, I'm gonna, I don't got nothing to do.
You underestimate how much time I have.
You underestimate
how insane I am.
The Panda Express Papers. Things I learned last night. All right, what are the Panama Papers?
The Panama Papers. I think the best place to start with the story is in early 2015. A journalist by the name of Bastian Obermeier. He worked for a German...
Obermeier. That's not the brand of cookie that we had to sell, right? Did you have to sell cookie dough when you were a kid? Do you remember when someone would come to your public school and they would enlist you in their MLM?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And we had to sell cookie dough?
And they'd be like, if you sell enough, you get a TV, but nobody ever got the TV.
Yeah, because the TV was like 1 billion points. But so instead you get this weird plastic thing. You're just like...
You get erasers. You get a pack of erasers.
Your neighbors and going door to door without your parents, by the way. Yeah. Just going door to door and be like, you want some cookie dough? My
school wasn't cookie dough. My school was butter braids.
What is
you do butter braid? Oh my gosh! Honestly,
is it bread or what is it? Butter braid?
It's kind of like if a cinnamon roll was a loaf of bread.
Okay.
But they would put filling and stuff in it. Honestly, very delicious. Actually, I was gonna get a different picture, but I'm getting this because I remember this was the piece of paper we took around with us to show people. Because people would be like, that's what people would say. You'd ring the doorbell, they'd be like, well, what is a butter braid? And then you'd show them this, and people would be like, that does look pretty good, actually.
We had a full... And people would buy that. If someone came to my door and was like, would you like to buy this weird croissant? No.
These were genuinely delicious, though. They had like a filling, so this is a strawberry one.
And they could never tell you how it helps your school.
They couldn't?
Yeah, it helps our school.
But how?
Oh.
Your principal was going to get to go to vacation this year for this.
Yeah. Hey, the domain on this is everythingmommyhood.com. And I just got to say, I don't like it.
It's crazy that the date is 2020. I didn't know this still exists.
The date is just peak COVID. Peak COVID. 3/23 to 4/6. That is like 10 days in.
Which I'm not going to lie. Like in the middle of lockdown, a butter braid would have friggin' hit.
Oh, dude. we found this cranberry cheese at Hy-Vee too early into the pandemic. Oh. And so we were eating cranberry cheese and wine every night.
Were you? Yeah, that sounds great.
It was awesome. And I lived right next to a Texas Roadhouse. Woof. Oh, because you could just walk over and go to the pickup window.
Yep. Yeah, lockdown was a weird thing because for some people it was obviously not good.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the best.
For a lot of our listeners, it was like the beginning of their life. They were so young and don't remember anything. And for us, it was the worst year of my life.
Yeah, for you, it was pretty rough. Yeah,
awful.
Everything that you did. Canceled.
Everything since been pretty bad.
Yeah.
Most things since.
I worked at the church. I didn't have to go to service.
With little glimmers of joy.
We had online church only, and I remember I had to reply to comments. I sat there replying to comments, and I'm not exaggerating. I had... I don't think I've ever told anybody this. My wife obviously saw it, but I had to have the online service playing right here,
and then
I'd be replying to comments, and I had, because it just came out, Animal Crossing on the Nintendo Switch, and I sat there playing Animal Crossing, and then I'd reply to a comment, and then I'd play Animal Crossing, and then I'd reply to a comment.
I can't believe you quit that job.
Everyone's like, Pastor Tim really giving some insight in these comments.
As your lead pastor was up there being like, self-leadership is really about leading yourself. And you're like, I said that.
That was my line.
I quoted
that. Was my line.
So anyway, that's a butter braid. We would sell cookie dough, but you didn't have the butter braids, right? They would order them.
Yeah, they ordered them. They came
and then
to
you had to do
later.
another trip where you go deliver them. We didn't have
to deliver them. They came in the mail.
Oh, not at our school. We were the entire supply chain. Otis Spunkmeyer was like, let the kids do the work. Otis Spunkmeyer was like, yeah, we'll give the school $200 in exchange for child labor. Send the kids door to door. Teach them how to be salesmen. Sell chocolate chips. Sell oatmeal raisins. Sell the whole thing, right? And then in a couple weeks, it's all going to come in.
They have to track all the sales. You had the spreadsheet.
You had a
spreadsheet.
Paper written stuff down.
And then you track all, and then you'd get all
and
the
product. And they would give you a check, and then you would give it to the school, and the school would give it to Otis Spunkmeyer, and then Big Otis would be like, all right, that's good. And then you would they would just send home a gigantic box of frozen cookie dough with you.
That is crazy. I wonder how many people bought cookie dough and didn't get it. Because like kids were running that. Like surely kids would be like, oh, I think he ordered 4, but I can't read.
No, you'd have the sheet. You'd have and it had stickers with their names on them.
Yeah.
And then you had to put it in your wagon. I had a wagon. And I would take it door to door. But like also, it was hot. And that cookie dough was frozen.
Like a wagon wheel.
The cookie dough was frozen when I got it.
I'm sorry, this was frozen earlier.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I for sure gave somebody food poisoning in that. And that's on Otis Spunkmeyer for trusting third graders.
I for sure gave someone food poisoning. That's hilarious.
And I gave it to one neighbor on purpose. And they know why.
I'm going to come to your house last.
I hate crimedom.
I did what you just said, but okay.
I hate crimedom.
Crimedom?
I hate crimed them.
Oh.
It's a reference to our show. It's a joke we made a couple weeks ago.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember me saying I hate crime you in the Panda Express parking lot?
Oh, I do remember that. That's a good line.
It's our new merch. You can buy that shirt right now. I hate crime Tim in the
That's insane.
in the Panda Express parking lot.
You can wear that in public.
You can wear that in public. You just can't wear it at Panda Express. They'll have some questions.
Okay, so this is Bastian Obermeyer.
Okay. Okay, that's how we got here. Otis Spunkmeyer. Obenmeyer.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
That's how we got here. Sorry for the tangent. And I know you're here for Jaron, let him talk. No.
Yeah. So Bastian Obermeyer, he was a journalist.
Oh, this episode's so long. We got to wrap it.
Worked for a paper in Germany, I believe.
Okay.
Called. There's going to be so much of this. Sorry.
Is it relevant?
Yes.
Okay.
Sadoosh Zeitung.
Sadoosh?
Sadoosh Zeitung.
You're confident with that? You're going to go with Sadoosh?
No, I'm not confident with that, but it's all I got. Sadoosh Zeitung.
All right. Blair's half German.
And then he worked alongside another journalist by the name of Frederick Obermeyer, who is not related to him. And in fact, their names, both Obermeyer, spelled completely different. But they just happen to be both be Obermeyers, and so this is his other.
And they're
Frederick
not related. Just go back and forth between them for a second. And they're not related.
They're not.
This is just what people look like there. And they both look like they're advertisements for Warby Parker glasses.
Crazy. So Bastian. Late July, or early in 2015. I don't know if it was July or something, but early 2015, he just gets a message from a guy calling himself John Doe. This is late at night. He's like trying to take care of his kids, do all the nightly chores and stuff. Kind of honestly, at first, a little annoyed by this message because he just gets this message that just slides in, and this guy says, "Hey, my name's John Doe. Are you interested in data?" And
yes.
He's like, I mean, what kind of data are we talking about? And he's like, I've got lots if you want to see it. And so he's a journalist, and so he's like, I get weird messages like this all the time of people like,
yeah, I get weird messages all the time. You're like, you want my data?
Are you interested in data?
What kind of data? Data boy. You're like, what? Got him.
And so, long story short, they're messaging back and forth, and John Doe is telling him, he's like, I can't reveal my identity to you. I can't meet you in person. Like, this is the only way we can ever communicate.
Okay.
And he says, why? And he says, because I'm in danger. And he says, but I have a lot of data for you. And he's like, how much data are we talking? And he says, more data than you've ever seen in your life. And so he sends him this set of documents.
Uh-huh.
And this first set of documents was enough to kind of pique Obermeyer's interest, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was just like, honestly, like a lot of articles of organization for like businesses.
Sure.
And he's like, okay, I'm not sure what I should really do with that. And he's like, wait till you see the second set. And
wait till you see the second set. That's more data.
I've got more data for you. And so he sends him a second set of data. And the second set of data is 2.6 terabytes of essentially spreadsheets. And so this is 11.5 million documents of
okay.
of essentially, and I mean, there's PDFs and other document like Word docs and stuff like this too. But essentially, these are inventories and articles of organizations and legal documents of businesses being put together in Panama, shell companies being put together in Panama. And it is all of the information about them.
Okay.
So what you're actually seeing in these documents is when a shell company is created, and you're seeing who is creating them. And so it's linking a bunch of people all over the world to sometimes legal, but sometimes illegal activities.
Okay.
To operate with tax havens and tax avoidance, and also conduct crime. And this all came specifically from this company. Let me get the name of it right. Mossack Fonseca, which is a law firm out of Panama.
Okay.
Here's Ramon Fonseca.
Fonseca?
Hold on, Fonseca. Sorry, Fonseca.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think Fonseca is
I put them
name.
together. And Jürgen Mossack.
Okay.
These are the founders of the company.
I don't like this guy.
So yeah, you shouldn't, because Jürgen Mossack, he lives in Panama because his dad moved to Panama after World War II.
I wonder why.
Because he was one of them.
Yeah.
And he got enlisted by the CIA.
When did you move here? 44, 45, somewhere around there.
What brought you to Panama?
What? Like the weather, the sports, the international law. We just really like it.
Well, no, his dad got courted by the CIA to be a spy for the communists.
Sure.
Or I guess a spy on the communists. And so that's Mossack, Jürgen Mossack.
Okay.
Ramon Fonseca is a little bit of a different story. Ramon, he wanted to be a priest, and so he went to seminary, started learning that world.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know exactly what happened, but he failed at being a priest. And so then he started going to school to be a lawyer. He shifted to law and learned all about law. And then at some point he met Mossack, and they said, hey, let's start a firm together. And they created Mossack Fonseca. And this company, what they did is they would organize businesses in Panama. And so, honestly, we used a company like this to file our businesses. And what these companies do is you go to them, they take care of all of the paperwork for you, and they organize your business. They help you file with the government, make you a legal entity, and then you have a person there who essentially operates as your like government go-before, where it's like they will sign documents for you. They will do all of the like legal side of things. They're like a lawyer. They're a lawyer that do that type of things. It's called a registered agent. And so they did that. But the the catch was they did it in Panama, and Panama is a tax haven country.
Yes.
Because they allow a lot of that stuff is not public information. They don't broadcast that out. They don't. And so if you were someone somewhere else in the world who wanted to hide your wealth, Panama was always a great place to do that.
Right.
And so they would operate in Panama doing this. And what's interesting about it is technically what they are doing is illegal or is legal. But because the nature of the fact that it was so private in Panama, it attracted a lot of people who were doing it for illegal means, who were tax evading or who were laundering money or who were like drug cartels,
sure,
again, laundering money, trying to obfuscate things. And it's interesting when all of this came out, they talked about how they're like, we don't know who our customers are in a lot of cases. A lot of times where there is a lawyer,
there's a barrier. There's like a buffer.
We don't understand these things. We don't know what's going on.
Sure.
And so they describe themselves as a car manufacturer. We're a car manufacturer. We make cars. People buy them. If they use the car to rob a bank, that's not on us.
Okay.
So that was an interesting defense that they used for a long time.
I mean, unless they come to you and they go, hey, I'm going to buy this car to rob a bank.
Well, what's interesting,
I need a car that I can rob a bank with, which, and that's honestly, hey, come on down to Toyota, you know? Look at the spacious back third row. These seats fold down, plenty of room for cash bags if you'd like. And then you can actually fold down the captain seats as well if you need to lay down and hide behind here for the cops. And the pulling open door on this minivan, Toyota Sienna, is perfect because if you just open that sliding door and then close it, you can just run off, you know? And, I think this is, acceleration on this is pretty great.
Pretty good,
so
yeah.
I think that for the needs that you've stated that you have and I know about, this might be the best vehicle for you to rob a bank with.
But don't worry, we're not going to write down in your needs.
But I'm not going to tell anybody your needs.
I'm not going to tell anybody what you need.
I know your needs, but I won't tell anybody. I got you.
I gotcha. Yeah, kind of. Except, so they used that as like their defense when this started hitting the news.
Good defense.
But they quickly backpedaled and changed that analogy.
Okay.
And they changed it to, no, we're like a knife manufacturer. If someone uses a knife to kill people, the knife manufacturer is not in trouble.
Well, that's a little bit more.
Well, the reason they backpedaled is because there was a specific document that was a part of this that they were like, oh, we probably shouldn't use the card analogy here because it's probably a little too on the nose. Because there was in 1983, and there's documents in the leak, the Panama Papers leak, that talked about how Mossack Fonseca worked for, set up a shell company for an organization that was out of London. And in 1983, there was this famous gold heist called the Brinks-Mat gold heist. And there was this facility right next to Heathrow Airport where there was this big robbery that occurred. And the people who broke in, they expected there to be money there. They didn't know there was gold. There ended up actually being $26 million worth of gold.
Oh, my gosh.
They took these gold bars, melted them down, and it was never recovered, the gold bars. They never found the gold bars or the people the robbers. And they just made out with them. When this happened, obviously it was huge.
They did what? They made out with them?
Yeah. So look at all this gold. I know what I'm going to do when I get home.
When you get home.
I'm not even going to wait.
I'm going to wait till I'm in the HOV lane.
It's a good thing we bought this SUV from Mossack Fonseca with fold-down captain seats.
It's a perfect thing that I just bought this 2019 Toyota Sienna with plenty of room for making out with gold. Purchase it now. Hey, this week's sponsor is this 1991 Ford F-150 available in Independence, Missouri. And it's just someone's Facebook Marketplace post. It runs, drives great. Bought to be a project truck, but no longer have the time to do so. So 4,500 or best OBO, which is our best offer. So it looks like a pretty decent truck. And so if you're in the Kansas City area and you're looking for a Ford F-150, get your needs met with this one that's on Facebook Marketplace. The seller's name is Nathan Sipes. So
go to nathansipes.com/TILLN podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna message him right now. I'm gonna tell him, hey man, just plugged your truck. Hey man, just promoted this on my podcast.
Hope you get a sale.
On my podcast.
If you get a sale, you owe me 20%.
Sell it. Send.
Use code TILLN podcast at checkout. You go to pick that up and you just say, hey, TILLN podcast. And then he has to give us 20%. He did message him. Hey, thanks for watching our show. If you like it, a great way to help out is by being a Patreon supporter. Doing that helps make the show possible, but it also gets a lot of perks for you. You can get every episode a week early, ad-free. You get access to a Discord where you can meet a lot of other people who love the show and actually hang out with Jaron and I every month on a hangout. And we're also in that Discord chat all the time, talking with people, talking about episodes and just random stuff in life. It's super fun. There's a way to get birthday messages, a free gift, merch discounts in there. So there's a lot of really great reasons to be a Patreon supporter. You get a lot of benefits out of it. And it also makes the show keep happening. So if that sounds great to you, you can go to support.tilln.com or tilln.com/support, or just tilln.com and search around until you find the links and become a Patreon supporter. We really appreciate you doing that. But if not, right back to the episode, right?
I'm gonna send you a screenshot of this so that way you can put that in the ad.
That's crazy.
Hey man, just promoted this on my podcast. If the Ford F-150 is not your speed, we have plenty of merch on TILLN.com that you can buy. That's so funny. All right, back to the episode. This week's sponsor, this guy's Ford F-150.
That's so funny. Okay. I don't remember what I was talking about. Oh, the bank, or the robbery.
Yeah. They got away with it.
Well, the reason why Mossack Fonseca changed the storyline and stopped using the car analogy is because it came out that in these document links, there was documents from when the shell company opened up right after that robbery. And the dollar amount that they were trying to put into the shell company, Mossack Fonseca were saying there's a pretty good chance that this is that robbery. And it's in writing that they recognize that this is probably that robbery.
Oh, and wow.
They don't
He emailed back? Is this robbery that just took place?
And the guy's like, LOL, yeah.
LOL.
And the guy's like, ha, sick.
Why does this gold have saliva on it?
This gold is so slobbery.
So it was the amount that was like
sloppy wet.
They're clearly trying to launder.
Yeah. And what's interesting is in this case, there's documentation. If you follow the thread line of this whole, like, that shell company, a couple months later, the police started to figure it out and were like narrowing in on this shell company. And they set up another shell company and moved all the money to a different shell company and obfuscated it before the police could get to the end line of it. And they did that on their own.
Got it.
So the journalists get these documents. They're reading through these documents. They're realizing, oh, this is pretty big. There's a lot of people.
This is a full service crime center. Is what it is.
Yeah. And there's a lot going on here.
Right.
It's 11 million documents. There's a ton of people named in it. World leaders, celebrities, cartels, terror organizations. It is massive. And so the two of them, they say, we can't take this on by ourselves.
Right.
And so they call the ICIJ, which is the International Consortium of Journalists. And I
knew that.
And they say, hey, we need help going through this. And so they put together a group of 200 journalists from, or I think it was actually 400 journalists from 200 papers around the world. And they said, we're going to work on this together. And
sure.
So they all were going to follow the trails for their locality. and figure out all the stuff of the people near them that were involved in this.
Do I just want to be a journalist? Like, is there money in it? Because, like...
Not really.
Yeah, unless you become like an author and sell books and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean... money. But, like, I just love putting puzzles together, you know?
And that's what these people did. But here's the thing. They recognized very quickly that there was a lot of very powerful people in these papers. And so all of these people, all these journalists basically went into hiding for a year. And
also, you could just become a YouTuber who does this stuff. And that stuff doesn't even have to be true.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Like that dumb kid?
Like that dumb kid? Are you talking about Yeah, I know.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Do you know
who I'm talking about when I say that dumb kid? Because that feels like enough.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about, actually, sadly.
And that's what I'm saying, is that like he's just on YouTube just saying stuff.
Yeah. And he's built a career.
That's what I'm saying.
It's crazy.
People who don't know what we're talking about Shama Marima. No, but that's what I'm saying, is like you could just, I don't know, maybe when my Takes the Cake comes out, maybe it'll blow up like that. People will be like, there's fraud happening.
So what's interesting is each of these people recognized how dangerous this was.
Yeah.
And so they all went into hiding for like a year. They all worked on air-gapped computers, which if you remember in our last episode, these are computers that have never been connected.
Much previous episode, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we did an episode a while ago where we talked about air gaps. If you don't remember, air-gapped computers are machines that have never been connected to the internet. They physically can't. They don't have Wi-Fi cards. They don't have Ethernet ports. It's impossible to connect them to the internet. The only way to get data on them is through flash drives. So they're isolated machines that are disconnected from any network. What's interesting about it is they also knew that, okay, at the end of the day, even if it's air-gapped, it's a physical machine that exists and that data's there. And so what they did is they took them apart, and on the hard drives, the screws that attach the hard drives, they put...
How do they get these?
These air-gapped computers?
Yeah.
You can get them anywhere.
No, but I mean, like, how do we get the data from it? Is that what the whole thing is?
John Doe leaked the data. The guy who was interested in some
data. He had
data.
access to one of these air-gapped things.
No, not an air-gapped computer. He got... we'll talk about how he got these later.
Okay.
But he distributed the data to these
But
people.
I'm saying, like, the data is on the air-gapped computer. That's where I was confused. But keep going with the air-gapped stuff.
So the air-gapped computer, the way they got the data is through flash drives.
Right,
so they put the flash drives on, and they were able to download all the data.
Gotcha.
And they recognized that they had hard drives in there, and people could still, if someone got into that facility, wherever they had the computer or their home or whatever, they could take that hard drive, copy the contents of the hard drive, know what was on it. And so what they did to be able to tell if somebody did that, on the screws that screwed the hard drive into their machine, they painted over that with glitter nail polish. And the reason they did that is because...
It's clear unless you shine a light on it?
Well, no, they took a picture of it. They took a high-res picture of it, and because it's glitter, it is always random. And so they could, if someone ever took that off and then tried to put it back and put glitter on it, it would be a different pattern of glitter.
Oh.
And so they could compare it with the picture and know somebody got into this hard drive. Isn't that crazy?
Jeez.
Yeah. So the level of security...
I don't have anything I'm trying to hide that bad. Also, I don't know if I have the brain to be like, here's how I would hide that.
Yeah, that crazy. Yeah. So these journalists spent 2 years, or they spent 1 full year pouring through these documents, putting all the plans together. And then finally on April 3rd, 2016 at 6 p.m. European time, 400 journalists in 80 countries published at the exact same time articles outlining what they found in these papers. And so obviously this was massive news.
Right.
What we found from it is there was offshore companies operated out of this single company basically worldwide.
Yeah.
And they incorporated, what's interesting is initially when this company was founded, the earliest companies that they started were all in Panama. But when the U.S. took over control of Panama, the laws changed and Panama wasn't as good of a shell company country.
Okay.
So then they went global and they started using all these other countries that have good shell company locations. And they opened up these franchises essentially in all these different countries to operate their shell companies. And so obviously, tons and tons and tons of companies were opened, operating out of these different companies. And
yeah,
they were linked to,
it's crazy.
I think the number was 12 world leaders, dozens of celebrities, and then hundreds of very wealthy individuals.
Go back to this graphic. Third one from the bottom.
Yeah, Nevada. Reno, Nevada is a tax haven.
It is Nevada. That's what we're talking about, Nevada.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is the United States not red?
I don't know why it's not red. I was looking at that too when I first saw this. But yeah, Reno, Nevada is a big tax haven. What's really interesting is in this leak...
Propaganda. They're always trying to make it seem like, oh, it's everyone else, not us. And then they put there's 1,200 documents from Nevada in there. Interesting.
What's really interesting is this leak, there are tons of people from all over the world listed in this. World leaders, celebrities. There are very few Americans listed in this document.
Interesting.
And listed in this leak. And one of the reasons for it is because the United States has its own tax havens in Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming, South Dakota are all tax havens. And so you don't have to leave the country to set up quote unquote offshore accounts where you could hide your money. So there were very few Americans listed in this.
I got some offshore accounts. If the IRS hears that, I don't know. I'm joking. Yeah. If that turns out to be true, that's crazy.
That was an accident.
But I don't know that. I have business managers.
Yeah. And so
kill them. Not me. I don't know. Does the IRS kill people?
Potentially. That's a good rumor to start.
Yeah, the IRS kills people.
The IRS kills people.
I got hate crimed by the IRS.
You hate me because I don't pay taxes.
Yeah, they don't like me.
Yes, that is why I hate you.
We should not joke about me not paying taxes, by the way. I'm in a pretty big debt to the IRS.
I don't pay taxes.
I don't think we should.
I haven't paid taxes.
I haven't paid taxes in probably like 7 years.
It's been a long time since I paid taxes.
Anyway.
So let me pull up this picture. The extent of people listed in these documents is pretty wild. So this is an image from, I believe, a French newspaper listing the people whose names were found in this. And so at the top, we have a bunch of leaders of countries. I think there's 12 of them.
Okay.
And so these are actual presidents, kings, prime ministers who have money in offshore accounts operated by Mossack Fonseca. What's interesting is the list below. I think it's actually far more interesting because these are global leaders.
Associates of.
Our associates. And one of them that's really interesting is this guy by the name of, let me make sure I get his name right, Sergey Roldugin.
Okay.
Sergey Roldugin. He is a celloist and a successful celloist, but he is listed as the owner of multiple companies in these papers that total over $2 billion worth of assets, which would make his net worth $2 billion. The interesting thing about Roldugin is he's not only a celloist, but he is a close friend of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, of
course. He's actually been lifelong friends with him. Here he is at Putin's wedding. Or no, this is a dedication.
This is Putin's...
This is a Putin's child dedication. And he's actually the godfather of Putin's daughter. And he says he's not a wealthy... He talks all the time
Putin looks
about how
so
he's not
happy in this too. You would not even imagine the joy.
And so Roldugin...
He looks like... Go back to Putin. He looks like Stephen Miller.
I know. Isn't that kind of weird?
Isn't that weird?
It's kind of weird.
Wow.
But Roldugin, what was kind of surmised from this document is Roldugin, there are these moments where you can see money moving through Roldugin's accounts from different shell company to shell company to shell company. Yeah. And then it goes out to a Russian bank. And people are like, yeah, he is... They started calling him Putin's wallet. This guy is Putin's wallet.
Interesting. Okay.
And he's not the only one. Putin, you'll see, is listed
right. He's got childhood friends, close friends.
There are multiple people. And we see this. There is the president of Syria is down there. There are multiple, the president of China is down there. There are multiple world leaders who have these associates who have billions of dollars worth of asset under management from these shell companies that are running through these people who are associated with them.
President of Argentina.
Yeah. And so this hit the news.
Prime minister.
This hit the news. Russia immediately started calling this Western propaganda.
Of course.
China blocked it from all of their internet. It was completely blacklisted. Within 4 hours, it was gone from Chinese media.
Right.
What is really interesting, though, is the day this came out, there was also an interview with the Prime Minister of Iceland.
Who was on the graphic.
Yeah, the Prime Minister of Iceland. Let me get his name right. Sigmundur Davíð.
Let me get his name right. Sigmundur
Gunnlaugsson.
Let me get his name right as I say it completely wrong for sure.
Gunnlaugsson.
Okay.
And he ran on a campaign that was about
integrity.
It was specifically about the rich avoiding taxes. Was like how he campaigned into power. And so he has this interview, and in this interview,
these people suck, man.
There's this interview where he is taken in, and they film it at the Prime Minister's mansion. And the ICIJ journalists were like, okay, the local Icelandic journalist was like, I want to interview him, but he's going to know something's up if I'm the one interviewing him.
Right.
And so he says, I'll come with you. I'm going to hide in a different room. You, another ICIJ journalist, you approach him. You say you want to interview him about the Icelandic economy. And so they show up. He does this interview. They agree to it. He sits down, and for like 20 minutes, he just soft lobs questions, kind of buttering him up, being like, talk about the economy. Your presidency, you were seeing the numbers go up. You're doing such a great job. Things are so great. And then it turns, and I actually have the video footage of this. I want you to watch. It's going to start. The first couple seconds of this are going to be in Icelandic. It's going to quickly shift to the interview where it's in English.
Okay.
And so this is that video.
This is the Prime Minister?
Have you or did you have any connections yourself to an offshore company?
Myself? No. Well, the Icelandic companies, and I have worked for Icelandic companies, had connections with offshore companies, even the what's it called? The
Wait for it.
Workers' unions. So it would have been through such arrangements, but I have always given all of my assets and that of my family up for the taxes. So there has never been any of my assets hidden anywhere.
Mr. Prime Minister, what can you tell me about a company called Vintris?
Well, it's a company, if I recall correctly, which is associated with one of the companies that I was on a board of, and had an account.
Oh my gosh!
Which, as I mentioned, has been with the tax on the tax account since it was established.
The other journalist came out, and then he stormed out of the room. He went to his kitchen because he saw this other journalist, and he's like, "Oh, you're trapping me." And they start arguing in Icelandic, and then he leaves the room. They filmed this 2 weeks in advance of of everything leaking out, but they released this video the same time everything else came out.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Things I Learned Last Night. If you like the show, you want to support us, we've got merchandise that you can get, and it's good stylish stuff that I made. I put a lot of work into this stuff, so it's great to find other TILLN fans in the wild and be like, wait a minute, I know that shirt. And so we would love for you to do that. You can pop over to shop.tilln.com, or there's a QR code, or there's a link in the description. There's plenty of ways to find it. We promise we made it super easy. So thanks for supporting the show, and thanks for listening.
And so
what happened to this guy?
That company was his offshore company. And a little bit of background about that is when he got into politics, he sold that company to his wife for $1 through the offshore system. So his wife was on the paperwork as the owner of the company.
Right.
There's $9 million in assets under there that he was very clearly, he did not disclose it on his tax forms.
I think this is what I'm trying to explain to people too, is like, you don't understand the level of wealth that exists.
Yeah.
Because it was just yesterday, Logan Paul sold a Pokemon card for $16.5 million.
Crazy.
You know who he sold that to?
Who?
Anthony Scaramucci's son.
That's crazy.
Scaramucci was the press secretary for 11 days in the first Trump administration.
Yeah.
And it's just like that guy, Scaramucci, who I've listened to several podcasts of, and I was like, oh, I think this guy's guy. Now I'm sitting here going like, his son was able to spend $16.5 million on a Pokemon card. That means that if that's the amount of money you can spend on a Pokemon card, that means you have
a lot
this
more.
much more.
Yeah.
And that's where I go, like, why are we scrapping?
But I will also say,
no,
I will also
don't interrupt me in the middle of my trying to start a revolution.
I'm not. A lot of those are in and of themselves tax havens because you don't pay property taxes on a Pokemon card.
Right.
And so if you have $16 million in assets and that's a Pokemon card, that is a tax haven in and of itself. And that's the same thing with fine art. Like fine art's the same thing.
I understand.
You move money into these things that are just fake tax holders. So this kid might have, I don't think the kid might have bought that. Maybe, how old is he? I don't know how old he is. Is he an adult?
No, he's an adult. Yeah.
Okay, so he might have just wanted that. He might have just had the money and just wanted that.
To pay $16.5 million for it.
Yeah. But
that's what I'm saying is that like whenever, and this is what I'm annoyed by, is that whenever people talk about the rich, it's things like this where they're doing these offshore accounts and stuff. We're not talking about the dude in your town who makes $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a different thing entirely.
Like, and I don't think people understand how much money there is.
Yeah, it's insane
that some of these people just have.
Yeah, and they're going to, and what we see in these papers, they're going to extreme lengths to keep it hidden for tax avoidance.
Yeah,
but not just. That is one of the interesting things in this. And through all this, there is a storyline about a prince in, I want to say, the United Arab Emirates. I can't remember what nation, but a nation in that general region of the world. And he had a shell company that owned a plot of 3 houses in a row on the beach in Malibu.
Yeah.
Totaling $80 million.
Right.
And an interesting thing from that is there is a actual logical explanation to that of if the prince is coming to Malibu for a vacation.
Yeah, you don't want
anyone to know that this is his house.
Right.
And that he's going to be there. And so there is like, and that's true of like celebrities too. Like there is a real like actual reason why you want to keep some of this stuff hidden.
You're going to live in a gated community. You want to like, because you don't, it's a security risk.
Yeah. There is like a safety thing there. And there is also a privacy thing. Like there is a level of like,
speaking of privacy thing, I've decided that I'm gonna, because I saw a guy doing like, I'm paparazziing the paparazzi. Have you seen that? Yeah. Where like the paparazzi there with the camera and there's another guy who just takes his picture and films them and then they get real mad.
Yeah.
But I think he's not going far enough because I don't have anything to do during the week.
Yeah.
And so now what I'm gonna pick one guy out of the paparazzi.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna sleep outside of his house.
Yeah.
And when he wakes up in the morning and goes out to his car, I'm taking his picture and I'm yelling stuff at him. And I'm gonna follow him everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until he has a mental breakdown. And then I'm gonna stand over him and I'm gonna take a picture of his mental breakdown and then I'm gonna print out like a magazine cover that just says his name's probably Michael, I assume. Michael loses it. And I'm gonna send it to him in the mail.
Yeah, just over and over again.
I'll just
thousands of copies of this magazine.
Just Michael lost it.
Yeah, you're gonna figure out every grocery store he frequents and change out all the magazines.
I'm not joking when I say like I'm gonna like I don't got nothing to do.
You underestimate how much time I have.
You underestimate me. Nah, yeah.
You underestimate how insane I am.
But did the Iceland guy get in trouble?
Here's what's crazy. Gunlaugson, that video comes out. The next morning.
Sounds like good night.
The next morning.
Gunlaugson.
The next morning, he looks out the door of his prime minister's mansion to this. And
this is what we got to do, guys.
What's really interesting about this is Iceland, specifically Reykjavik? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Where the mansion is. There's 130,000 people who live there. This is a crowd of 20,000 people. So this is almost 20% of the population of that city show up to protest him. And I'm not exaggerating when I say they are egging his house. They all brought eggs.
Good.
And they are egging the prime minister's mansion. Someone said we ran out of eggs. And so they start trying to buy eggs. They like sold the city out of eggs because they were egging his mansion. 48 hours later, he steps down. 48 hours after this thing hit.
Good.
So like it actually was like real
That's crazy.
tangible like impact in Iceland because it came out that this guy was just a liar. And he was literally doing the thing that he campaigned against to get his position of power.
And this is 2016.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like politicians have figured out now that if they just push through long enough, it'll go away.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And so this was obviously worldwide news.
Right.
those 12 world leaders, a bunch of world leaders who obfuscated through other people. What's interesting is there's a bunch of celebrities. Jackie Chan was in there. He had like 12 companies in there.
What?
And then who else was it? Lionel Messi was in there, which ironically, he was under investigation for tax fraud already.
Yeah.
And then when that came out, it was like, oh, here it is. And so there's a lot of these celebrity. And here's the thing. Here's the thing about the papers. I think I kind of said this, but a lot of the people in these papers were doing this legally. Because if you have a shell company and you disclose that you own that shell company in your taxes, that is just a legal operation of a shell company.
That is an asset that you own.
Yeah, but a lot of people were using these illegally, and they were using them to hide taxes or to launder money. And so this was actually linked to multiple terror groups and cartels that were laundering money through this Panamanian company, to hide their activities. And so this hits the news. The biggest impact was in Iceland. There was impact worldwide. There was a lot of people who I don't want to say face like the music for this, but it did open the eyes of a lot of people worldwide of what their governments were doing and what important people within their country were doing. A year later, there was a Maltese investigative journalist and like blogger. She was like an independent journalist. And the important thing about this is this exposed the dealings of one specific company that operated shell businesses.
Sure.
This is not all the shell businesses.
This is not all the shell businesses.
There's a lot more out there. And this kind of opened up the doors for journalists. In 2017, I shouldn't say the years because I don't know the exact years, but throughout the rest of the 2010s, we saw 2 more leaks come out: the Pandora Papers and the Paradise Papers. Loved the P alliteration.
Panama, Paradise, Pandora.
Yeah, and in that we saw more and more of these shell companies.
Panda Express.
We saw more and more of these shell companies.
The Panda Express Papers.
The Panda Express Papers. We saw more and more of these shell companies get exposed, and more of these journalists were independently trying to chase down people who were operating shell companies. And there was a specific journalist by the name of Daphne Galizia, who was trying to uncover a specific politician in Malta who was corrupt using these shell companies.
Right.
And she was getting really close down the trail. They had for years been trying to silence her, actually. She had faced a ton of cases, like defamation cases, that she kept winning. And one day she wrote a blog outlining her most recent findings. And the last line of that blog was, "We need to come to terms with the fact that most of these people in power are crooks." And that was the last line that she wrote in that blog. She got out, got in her car, backed out of her house, drove a few yards down the street, and died in a car bomb. And this was an interesting moment in this whole storyline where all these journalists kind of got put on notice of like, hey, this is not just like powerful people in the world and celebrities and world leaders. These are criminals as well that are doing these things. And they are not opposed to killing people who are going to bring a light on their shady dealings. And so
they don't need to PR this.
Yeah, they'll just kill you.
Yeah.
And so this became, or that event kind of took this down a different light. A month after all this happened, John Doe, which, sidebar, we found out the way, in one of the early releases, we found out the way he got access to all these documents. He was actually a hacker who found that the company, Mossack Fonseca, their website was running an out-of-date WordPress plugin called Slider Revolution. And they used that vulnerability to get into the website. And they had on the same server hosted all of their company's documents. And so he just pulled everything.
Yep.
And so crazy, ridiculously easy vulnerability to patch that they just weren't aware of, weren't paying attention to, or something like that. And ended up costing them quite a bit. Because
so if you're running a weird shell company and you need to make sure that you don't have any weird back ends or back doors open, hire Tim.
Yeah, I could have stopped that.
You know what Tim loves? Crime. Put it on record. Tim loves crime.
I mean, to be completely fair, if they hired me, that would have never happened. I would have caught that vulnerability.
Tim loves crime. You heard it here, folks.
But here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing. Mossack Fonseca, they obviously got put in this negative life. They went under this huge investigation. Long story short, they ended up managing to get out free on all this because I don't know how, but in Panamanian courts, they were able to say, hey, we weren't aware of a lot of these things that people were doing, but it was still enough of an impact on their reputation as a business that they were not a safe place for you to do your crime.
To move that money anymore.
And so their company ended up going out of business.
Yeah.
And then throughout the stress of all of it, Mossack died. I don't know what happened to Fonseca. I don't know what he's doing in the world anymore. But it ended up having that impact. This is interesting. They had this thing called shelf companies, where they would start a company and they called it like aging wine on a shelf. And so they would start a company in 2003 and they'd set it on the shelf. And when you came and you say, hey, I got to move $10 million, they say, oh, we have the perfect company for that. Let me pull it off the shelf.
So that way it's not a new entity.
Yeah. And then it's like, you've been operating this company since 2003. And then now all this money is moving through it.
That's crazy.
Clever. Yeah. And they had subscription services for $8.75 a month. They had subscription services where
it's kind of like some of the bits that I have going right now. Like I've got some bits that I started when we lived together as roommates that, I mean, that's not going to pay off for another
I hate that.
30 years.
You got shelf bits.
I have shelf bits.
Shelf bits. Well, they had this subscription service, $8.75 a month, and basically the subscription service was, we're just going to sign documents for you to make sure things continue moving the direction you want them to move. And there was a storyline of this man. I can't remember the name of this guy, but he was an overseas criminal.
I'm sure it matters.
He was an overseas criminal in human trafficking. He gets put in prison. He got caught. Goes to prison.
His name.
It wasn't him.
And he kills himself.
He goes to prison. He goes to prison. He is in prison, and his business is he's still signing documents for his business while he's in prison because
I bet that's still true of the other guy too.
He's paying for this $8.75 a month. $8.75 subscription service.
Oh, that's it. I thought you were saying $875.
No, $8.75 a month for them to just keep signing documents, like forging your signature.
I don't know. I feel like for that big of an operation, it's probably worth $875 a month.
That's what's crazy is like they were an economy of scale. Like this was thousands and thousands of small, but shell businesses that they were operating.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so John Doe, a month after all of this comes out, he puts out a manifesto called "The Next Revolution Will Be Digitized," and basically it's this whole manifesto about how the elites of the world are tricking you, and this whole economy is set up to benefit the people at the top and extract from the people at the bottom, which is interesting that we just talked about this in the last episode. But I want to read the last paragraph and a half because it's really interesting. And he says, so he's setting up this whole story about how capitalism is essentially economic slavery, where the elites are getting all the benefit and everybody else is suffering. And then he says this: in this system, our system, the slaves are unaware both of their status and of their masters, who exist in a world apart, where the intangible shackles are carefully hidden amongst the reams of unreachable legalese. The horrific magnitude of detriment to the world would shock us all awake. But when it takes a whistleblower to sound the alarm, it is cause for even greater concern. It signals that democracy's checks and balances have all failed, that the breakdown is systemic, and that severe instability could be just around the corner. So now is the time for real action, and that starts with asking questions. Historians can easily recount the issues involving taxation and imbalances of power that have led to revolutions in ages past. Then, military might was necessary to subjugate peoples, whereas now, curtailing information access is just as effective or more so, since the act is often invisible. Yet we live in a time of inexpensive, limitless digital storage and fast internet connections that transcend national boundaries. It doesn't take much to connect the dots, from start to finish, inception to global media distribution. The next revolution will be digitized, or perhaps it has already begun. What is really interesting is I think his diagnosis of what's going on here is perfect.
Okay.
But what's unfortunate is I think he put this message out. And because in 2016, that last line was true. That last line is the limitless digital storage, faster internet connections, transcend national boundaries. What has happened over the last decade is this internet that was open and built by tons and ran by us, the people, has been consolidated to a handful of corporations.
So you think that he put that out and the corporations were like, that's our vulnerability. So we need to tighten that up.
I think it's probably two
I
things
love
at
when
once.
Tim gets back into conspiracies a little bit.
I think it's
fun, right?
I think it's probably two things at once because what we've seen since then, and it started a little bit before, but I think what we've seen since then is we've seen the majority of online data is now concentrated to Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle. Meta has some of it, but it's really just their ecosystem that they have. Apple's the same thing, but it's really just their ecosystem. Majority is 4 companies are operating all of the data on the internet, which means they have control of all of the data on the internet. And this thing that he's talking about where there's limitless access to data and all of this can be accessed digitally, I think it's kind of like what we've seen with the media landscape, where everything's consolidating to a handful of companies that own all of these different things. You can't get real actionable, what I should say is true information anymore, because the people who control, there's only a couple people who actually control it.
Puppet masters at the top.
And it reminds me of a couple of weeks ago, there was this big Cloudflare had an issue that took down half the internet,
right?
And this thing went viral. But it's really accurate because it really is this handful of companies. And Cloudflare probably shouldn't be that big. They were in this case because of the DNS. But what is
the single pillar at the bottom?
I don't know what it's cut off. I think it was like a meme. It's a meme. It's not like an actual company. But it really is. Amazon's AWS, Microsoft's Azure, Google's cloud services, Oracle's cloud services are the majority of the internet. Cloudflare runs DNS. They also have cloud services too now. But the majority of the internet is a handful of companies now. Even if like you're hosting with Squarespace or Webflow or a WordPress host, they're renting AWS servers and Google servers. And so all of this data is concentrated in one place. And so I think the point he's making, the revolution will be digitized. We have access to all this information. I don't think it's true anymore.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what to do with that information. I think his diagnosis is accurate, and I think they've patched the vulnerability.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I wish there was a nice happy ending to this. I guess the happy ending is that interview was really cool to watch, and watch that guy get kicked out of his job and be exposed as a liar. But yeah, everything else is just there's an underworld of really rich people moving money around and getting away with it.
That's nuts.
Yep.
That's true. Well, another encouraging episode from things I learned last night. You know, if you like this and you want to know what else is the government hiding from me, why don't you listen to the Montauk Project episode? It's a great episode about how trustworthy everyone is. So you can go listen to that and or watch that. Thanks for being here for our show. All my tour dates are at paulruddtheactor.com. You can get next week's episode. Oh, speaking of shell companies, we have a shell company. You pay into it every month. We have a service, and it's called Patreon. And we would love to see you over there. And we take all that money and we hide it. And so please join us over there. I don't know how to end it. Fiddle off, man.
That's crazy.